7th grade, Test 10, Study Guide, problem number 1. So it says the table is proportional, which means it's a direct variation. And they also say that you have to find how many milliliters of water there are for every 1 milliliter of milk. So in other words, you put milk on the bottom. So for number 1, we can take any of these points right here. It doesn't matter which ones you choose. I'll just pick the first one. I got 25 over 2. I put water on top because it gave me water first, and milk on bottom because it gave me that second. All I do is divide in and out. I divide this, put a decimal there because it says write as a decimal if necessary. So I multiply that, subtract a 0, drop one number down, multiply that, subtract. Since I put my decimals, I can add zeros now. Add 1 0 down, and I get my answer is 12.5 milliliters. So we check our answer in the back. Yep, it's good. Number 2. Number 2 says Tony and Tiffany collect semi-precious stones. Tiffany, she paid $44 for 9 pounds. That means over 9 pounds. Tony, he paid $25 for over 3 pounds. So which one got the better buy? Well, we're going to find the unit rate and see. So I go in and out. 44 goes in, 9 goes out. That goes in about, what's that about? Well, I know 9 times 5 is too big, so let's try 4. 36. Over here, and I'm going to stop right there because that might be enough. Over here, $25 in, pounds out. That goes in about 8 times. I automatically know that $8 and some change is more than $4, so Tiffany had the better buy there. She paid less. Number 3. Number 3 says, which of these is proportional? So the fraction they gave us is 3/7, and we're going to test these. So A, the fraction is 24/56. Now, if this is proportional, there's a few things we can do, but just the simplest is ask yourself, what do I multiply to get this? Well, I multiply by 8. If you multiply by the same thing down here, this is proportional. In other words, this is the same fraction as this. The other ones won't work. For example, B, 24 over, it's 12 over 50, what am I doing? 12 over 35. That won't be proportional, and I'll show you why. So I go 3 times 4 to get 12, and if I multiply 7 times 4, I don't get 35, so this is not the same fraction, meaning it's not proportional. And the other two won't work either, so A was the answer for that. Okay. On number 4 now. Problem number 4 says, a bus travels 200 miles. Number 4. A bus travels 200 miles on or over 8 gallons. At that rate, in other words, it's going to be proportional. How much for 350 miles? You got to keep miles with miles. If you put the miles where the gallons goes, that's how you get this wrong. So all proportions, we always cross multiply. So I go over here, 350 times 8. 0 times 8 is 0. 8 times 5 is 40. Carry my 4. 8 times 3 is 24. Plus 4 is 28. Now, isolate the variable, or get x alone, by dividing by the coefficient, dividing by the number in front. And remember that shortcut, when I'm dividing, I got zeros, I can hit those. And so 28 divided by 2, in other words, half of 28 is just 14, so it's 14 gallons. Check our answer in the back. Yep. Next problem, number 5. Number 5 says the ratio of cats to people is 6:5. How many cats if there's 220 cats and people? So they're asking about cats versus total, not cats versus people. So we got to add these two together to get total. So the ratio of cats to total is 6:11 if it's 6 cats to 5 people, because 6 plus 5 is 11. So I put cats with cats, total with total, and again, cross multiply and divide. And I multiply these two, I go 220 times 6, 6 times 0 is 6, 6 times 2 is 12, carry my 1, add the 1 this time, I get 1,320 equals 11 times x is 11x. Divide by the number in front of x, divide by that coefficient to get what x equals, or to get the answer. And so I go in and out, 1320 goes in, 11 goes out. 11 goes into 13 once, so that's where my first number has to go. Can't go anywhere else. Drop one digit down, 11 goes into that, but now my answer's not 12 because my decimal's over here, so I got to fill that in with a 0. So 120 cats. Check your answer in the back. Beautiful. Number 5. Excuse me, number 6. So number 6 says, find the constant rate of change. Alright, so I can take any point here, and put y over x. Okay? It's always y over x. Unless they ask us some weird question, unless they tell us otherwise, it's always going to be y over x. Okay? So the constant rate of change, which means this is a proportional table, I'll put dollars, right, money on top, dollars over time, 17 hours. And if I'm going to find the constant rate of change, that's like saying the unit rate, right? And they say round to the nearest hundredths. So I don't leave it as a fraction this time. So I go in and out, I divide 3 divided by 17, put my decimal points. Now, 17 goes into 31 time, and I subtract these two, and I get a difference of 13. And I can add zeros now because I put that decimal there. So I drop 1 0 down. Now I'm asking how many times does 17 go into 130? It goes in 7 times. 17 times 7 is 119. Subtract these two. Get a difference of 11. Drop one digit down. 17 goes into, remember 7 was a little too big, so we try 6. 102. And I can stop because we're rounding to the nearest hundredths, which means I have to go one more, which I did. And since that's 5 or higher, this will go up to 8. If it was 4 or lower, it'd stay down to 17. So the answer is 18 cents, 0.18 per hour. That's the rate, 18 cents per hour. Check our answer. And all is well. Okay, next problem. Number 7. That was number 6. Number 7. Okay, 7 says Juan earns $8 an hour. Which ordered pair would not appear on the graph? So we're looking at the ordered pairs. If the unit rate is $8 per hour and he's making no dollars for no hours, and this is proportional, meaning I can take all these points that they gave me and simply put y over x and see if they equal 8 or not. So for A, if I put y over x, I get 8. So that will be on the graph. If I put y over x, I get 8. That's on the graph. 24 divided by 3 is 8. 16 divided by 4 is not 8. So the answer to the question, which one of these wouldn't be on the graph? Well, that won't be on the graph because 16 over 4 does not equal 8. Number 8. Which value would complete the table? So we have this table right here, and they say it's proportional, meaning this y over x will equal all of these y over x's. They're all the same. So I'll just take 2, okay? You always want to pick the one with 1 because, the one that has a 1 in it, it's less work. But I'm going to pick a different one because they might give you a table sometime that doesn't have a 1. So I'll just go ahead and I'll pick the hardest one. I'll pick the last one, okay? Alright, so I put y over x. That should equal this y, which is missing. So I'll put a variable. When something's missing, we use a variable. Over x, and the x for that one is 3. So I got y over x on both sides. These should be proportional. In other words, they should be the same fraction when it's all said and done. So what makes that true? In other words, what is y? Let's cross multiply. 3 times 111 is 333. 5 times y is 5y. And divide like we always do. Y equals our answer. So I go in and out. 5 goes into that 6 times. Drop a 3 down, and then that goes in 6 times. There's a decimal. Can add a 0 now, and it goes in 6 times, and it zeroes out. So 66.6 is the value of y at that point. Check our answer in the back. Yep, looks good. Number 9. And the equivalent to checking your answer in the back is looking at your answer choices, right? A, B, C, D, to see if your answer's there. So, and if it's not, we redo it, right? We don't just guess and say, oh, that one's close enough. We just redo it. Alright, so we have to write the equation for this graph. Well, I see it's a straight line that goes to the origin, so it's proportional. So I take any point. See this point right here? The coordinates are 1, 10. So the coordinates are 1, 10. I can get my unit rate like, again, y over x. My unit rate is 10, or my constant rate of change is 10. So it's always y equals unit rate times x, but in this case we're going to call it p for presence. So the presents equals 10 times each year. That's how you find out the number of presents, 10 times the number of years. Okay, and what does the 10 stand for? 10 presents per year. That's what it means. Check our answer in the back, number 9. Yep, P equals 10Y and 10 presents per year. Very good. Number 10. So number 10 says a family uses 70 to 100 gallons of water. 10% is for brushing teeth and whatnot. How much for 2 people? Well, 10% of something means just take off a decimal. So we got 7 to 10 gallons times 2 people. Each time, that's 14 to 20 gallons for those activities for number 10. For number 10. Yep, 14 to 20 gallons. Woohoo! Number 11. So 11 says, flip over a page over here. Number 11 says a company raises price from $54 to $70.20. What was the percent of increase? Well, we got to find the amount of increase first. I got to subtract these two to figure out how much it increased by. It increased by $16.20. So the question is, $16.20 is what percent of the original? So we know how to do percent proportion. We put is over of. 16 is what percent of 54, right? Or part over whole. And what percent? Percent always goes over 100. So since I don't have that this time, I put x there. And I cross multiply. Multiplying by 100 means move the decimal 2 times. Multiplying by x means put the x after it. And divide. 54 goes here, 54 goes here. So I have x equals, I go in and out, 1620 divided by 54. 54 doesn't go into 1 or 16, it goes into 162, so I need to start there with my numbers. That's where people make mistakes. They put their first number in the wrong spot. So 54 into 162, I'm not sure. How about 5 into 16? Well, 5 into 16 would be about 3 times, right? So let me check. I gotta go 54 times 3 over here. 15. Oh, beautiful. Hit the nail on the head. But notice the decimal's over here, so I got to fill that in. So it's actually 30, not 3. 30. 30 what? Well, it's percent. 30% increase. Next problem. So we are on, it's like number 12. Number 12 says you bought an item and paid 5.5% sales tax. This added $2.75 onto the price. What was the price? In other words, $2.75 was 5.5% of what number? Is over of. So we don't have the of, we have the percent, and we solve. Multiplying by 100 just means move the decimal 2 times. Multiplying by x, put the x after it. Divide by the coefficient. Cross out our ones. I go in and out. Now, when I'm dividing by a decimal, if this number on the outside or divisor has a decimal, I have to move it. But if I move that, I've got to move it here too. Now, 55. How many times does 55 go into 275? Well, how about 5 into 27? That's about 5 times. So I'll go over here and I'll check that. Maybe down here I'll go 5.5 times 5. I got 25. Carry the 2. 27. Wahoo! Hit the nail on the head. So I put a 5 right there. 275. Zeroed out, but the decimal's here, so I got to put a 0 there. And 50. In other words, $50. $2.75 is 5.5% of $50. It makes sense, right? It sounds about right. You always ask yourself, does it sound about right? Otherwise, you want to catch a mistake. Number 13 says, you bought an item, you paid 7.5% sales tax. Percent always goes to 100. The original price was 40, so in other words, original or total was 410, not 40. How much did you actually pay, including? Okay, so there's 2 ways to do number 13. You can find 7.5% of 410 by using this, but then you have to add. You have to add that onto the original to get, the question was, how much did you actually pay? In other words, you're going to pay 410 plus tax. You got to add it on the tax. That's one way to do this. The other way to do this is you can add the tax on in your equation, so before you even start doing it. So in other words, if you're going to pay the whole thing, or 410, that's 100%, plus the tax, that's 7.5%, you're paying 107.5%. Now, this way is going to have bigger numbers to calculate. This way we'll have more steps. I know eventually I'm probably going to let you use calculators, not quite yet, but towards the end of the year. So I'm going to teach you the easiest way if and when you're allowed to use calculators. So I want to teach you this way. You can do it either way though, but I'm going to teach you this way even though our numbers are going to be bigger for now. So I'm going to go ahead and cross multiply. I got this times this and this times this. So I'm going to put the number with the most digits on top, 107.5 on top, times 410. Okay? So when I multiply these two, I go ahead, see that 0, so I skip a spot. Now I got 1 times 1075. So 1 times that is 5. Just try to keep these lined up here. And 1 times 7 is 7. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 1 is 1. It's easy to multiply by 1, right? Just copy that number. Now, I skip that spot. I'm done with this, so I got to add 2 zeros this time. And I multiply across there. And I get 0, 0, 3, 4. Add these up. I get 0, 5, 7, 0, 4, 4. There's 1 decimal space, so I add that 1 decimal space. So this times this is this big number, 44075. 0.0 means I don't need to write that. In other words, 44,075. 100 times x is just 100x. Divide by 100, that's beautiful. Dividing by 100, I just move the decimal 1, 2 times, or $440.75 is what I'll pay when I include 100% or the original price plus 7.5% or the sales tax. So I did it all in one shot. Now, if you want to do it this way and add that on later, find 7.5% of 410, and then add it on to 410, you're going to get the same answer. So either way is okay. Number 14, we have the price of a train ticket from Phoenix to Kansas is normally $127.00. Just call it $127. However, the train is offering 70% discount. 70% discount. And the question is, what is the sale price? Now, what you can do is you can do it this way. You can find 70% and then subtract. And then subtract that amount from there to figure out how much the students pay. But we can do it in one shot. If they're taking 70% off, you're only paying what percent? 30%. So, and instead of doing 2 steps, I'm going to do it in one. I'm going to find 30% of 127. So I cross multiply. 100 times x is 100x. Yes, it can go or here, or here. It doesn't matter. Now I'm going to multiply 127 times 30. There's a 0, so I skip that spot. 21. 6, add the 2 is 8, and a 3, so I got 3810. Divide by 100. And that means move the decimal 2 times. $38.10 is what you can actually pay. Make sure I didn't make a mistake. Looks good. Number 15. Alright, 15 says you bought a jacket that normally costs $48, 25% off. How much did you save? In other words, we're finding 25% of 48. That means 48 goes on the bottom because it is over of. Cross multiply. 48 times 25. I got 40. 20 with the 4 is 24. Skip a spot. Put a 0 for that. 8 times 2 is 16. Carry my 1. 9, 0, 10. And that's what's at 12. Divide by 100 means just take those off or move the decimal 2 times. And the answer is you saved $12. Which problem are we on? That was 15. Looks good. Let's see if we can do 16. So 16 says the Rams, the LA Rams, they gained 12 yards. That's positive. And then they lost 7. Oh, that's negative. And then they gained 2. How much did they, what was the total gain or loss? Well, if I add those up and subtract those two, I got a 7-yard, positive 7 integer to represent the gain or loss there. The net yardage, that's called. Okay, so we're on number 17 now. 17 says the boy in Montana. On one day it was 10 degrees. And then the next day was -1 degrees. And I say, what's the difference between those two? The difference means subtract. But we don't subtract anywhere. We do the rule for subtraction. Add the opposite. And then I add that up. There's a difference of 11 degrees. Number 18 says, write the fraction 22 over 12 as a decimal. So I go in and out, put my decimal, add some zeros. 12 goes into that one time. Subtract, drop that down. 12 goes into 100, I think 8 times. That's like 96. Subtract that. 12 goes into 40 like 3 times. That's 36. And we're going to have a repeating decimal. It's going to keep going 3, 3, 3. That number exactly is 1.83. Repeating bar, called the vinculum, only goes over the 3 because the 3 is the repetent, or the part that repeats. So we don't put it over the 8 because it doesn't go A3, A3. Okay? But the direction said this: round to the nearest hundredths. So I look to the thousandths and decide, well, that's not 5 or higher, so it stays the same. So rounded, it's about 1 and 83 hundredths. Number 19. Write this fraction 9/50ths. Same thing. Divide in and out. Put your decimals. Goes in 1 time. Subtract. Drop a 0 down. And we don't need to round that one. It's exactly 18 hundredths. And last one, number 20. Number 20 says, which numbers is the same as negative 10 thirds? Well, the first one, A, says negative 10, negative 3. Well, 1, 2, 3 negatives. If it's an odd number of negatives, it's a negative answer. So that one's the same. B, negative 10 over negative 3. Well, it looks the same, but negative, that's an even number. That's positive, so those aren't the same. They're opposites of each other. C says 3 1/3. Well, if I took this and I divided in and out, I would get 3 1/3, but this is negative, this is not, so it can't be that. And D, if I divide, I don't get 1 point whatever, so that doesn't work. So the answer had to be A. Alright, hope that helped you guys out.